Succession planning traditionally has always been organizations having a way to identify key and top talent, which can then be nominated and eventually put into those critical roles that become vacant. Typically, it's somewhat reactive in nature, whereas a more modern approach that we're seeing emerge is putting in the time and effort to create a more agile organization, which always has top talent identified, nurtured, and ready to take over any role that becomes vacant versus just that sort of C-level top critical roles that we've identified. Why is succession planning so important for all organizations and businesses? The first and obvious answer is, of course, there's a tremendous cost involved when we unexpectedly lose top talent within those critical roles. Moreover, it's really, I think, practicing that skill set and building that muscle within the organization of what does it mean to always be identifying what top talent is, becoming more versed and comfortable in understanding how do we measure top talent. And then how do we develop that top talent to really have them become prepared and skilled up for those roles? So it's more than just that reactionary approach to let's ensure we don't have any unexpected gaps. And more importantly, it's moving the organization in a direction that they are developing all of their employees' nurturing skill sets, and always in real time sort of reevaluating what is important to the organization and what really drives success within each role. And the more that we leverage that skill set as a whole, the more productive we see our people being, the longer that we end up retaining them. There was an interesting study I read recently where organizations were noticing the cost of when they weren't doing the succession planning. The market was becoming more competitive when they were trying to fill those roles because everyone was going externally. So the more that we can keep that sort of in-house and evaluate our internal roles, we're creating change on a larger scale in the market and also just reinvesting within our own talent. Often you have the same people in the organization owning the process of succession, so they're really, really close to it. They sort of lose sight of what exactly they're looking for, and they miss out on a lot of the key things that could be being developed further. Often it's things like emotional intelligence. If your potential successors don't have access to the other leaders in the org, there's a huge gap there that's never really closed. And so when they do get put into that position, they have a hard time adjusting or being accepted and being able to take over that role. A lot of organizations don't have the basic mechanisms defined, like do we have consistent job descriptions, competencies, core values for each role that we can use as a basic baseline to really understand, is this person ready for success? Another challenge I tend to see is organizations tend to overlook the importance of the employee's voice in the process. So often the bigger organizations will build succession plans, and they don't take into consideration, does this leader or manager even want to be moved into the next role? And they'll put them in, but there's no visibility, and then you get further down the road and they may just be perfectly content in the role they're in. So I think there's a lot of work to be done in kind of understanding what those new pieces are that we have to build in when we're planning this all out. First and foremost, you have this really rich amount of data available to you typically, even if you're using multiple systems or just something in Excel, but you have a chance to see, okay, who do we have in the organization? How long have they been here? Where do they want to go? What skills do they have? That part is so critical. I think we get so tied up in job titles specifically, levels, job grades, and okay, this is the first level below the CEO, let's only focus on them. But really leverage all that data you have access to. Don't be afraid to get creative. Ask for input again from the employees. Look at things like potential, more of sort of that soft skill stuff. Take that into consideration when you're forming succession plans, and don't be afraid to create what we call talent pools. So you have immediate successors, and then you have pools of talent that could also be potential, just needs development and time to develop, that then can move in to more of a successor role. So some of the key things you can start doing now, one, just take some time to understand a bit more holistically what's happening outside of the organization that could be driving some of the changes or challenges you're experiencing internally. So whether it's, hey, we're seeing changes in the market that's tending to drive a lot of people out, which is why we have so many high risk of loss people that we keep losing in our talent pool. And then from there, try to understand, okay, of those changes, what can we control? What can't we control? Additionally, don't be afraid to leverage those tools that are available to you. The PCMM, People Capital Maturity Model, it's a really effective tool. And what it does is it gives you very clear, concrete steps on, here's how you identify where your organization is today. And it gives you definitions of what that means. So what does the leadership look like? Organizational communication, performance, competencies. And then it gives you a framework to say, okay, for succession planning, for example, here's where you want to be. Here are all the steps in between to get there. And also, don't be afraid to leverage knowledge from other companies that you might partner with, leaders that you might have a strong network with. See what they're doing that's working for them. Don't be afraid to expand the reach of succession planning within the org. It does not have to be, as it was traditionally known, at just that top 1 and 2 layers. Often organizations find some of the best high potential talent that's ready and nurtured to take over already are within the company. We just need to find them and put in the time to develop and train them to be ready for that role.